Yes, joining us on Zoom as he does each Thursday morning, Geoff Macpherson. G'day, mate.
Righto.
Now, you are a bastion of Grace Theological College, but you're going to be talking to us today about what might be perceived as a pretty common church topic. How was Jesus fully God and fully man? But the more I think about this, the weirder it gets in my mind, because as you become a man, you go through a lot of things, and Jesus went through all of that.
That's right. And yet he was God the whole time. So where do we begin with this one, Geoff? I mean, I suppose it is a pretty foundational doctrine of the church, but I mean, right out the gate, that's quite a big idea to get your head around.
Yeah. So it's huge and it's amazing, and it's ultimately, again, we receive this by faith. So let's start with the Bible. Famous Bible verses, John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And then drop down to verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. So we could just say, I've just explained it to you. It's in John chapter 1. Go and read it for yourselves.
Too easy.
I've got about a million questions. Hard to pick just one, but I want to ask you this, Geoff, because was there like a moment where he was just fully human and then all of a sudden realized he was God, or did he know he was God from babydom, like, you know, sitting at the table being spoon-fed mushed pumpkin, goo goo gaga, I'm God? Like, it's really
That's so good.
confusing.
Yeah. Part of it comes down to how we kind of approach the whole story. So if we approach it like, oh, Jesus was just, there was this teenage couple, she's pregnant, they had this baby, they raise him, and suddenly he becomes famous, and then he dies on the cross, and his disciples go away and say, oh, he rose again, and he must be the Son of God. That's certainly the way some people kind of look at the whole story of Jesus. That's sort of from below, you might say. But when you read the Bible, it doesn't ever approach it from that angle. It's always like, no, God was doing something special. God sent his angel. God made an announcement. God, through the prophets, had been promising that he was going to send his Messiah. He was going to send his Savior. And Jesus, from the moment he opens his mouth, he expresses, you might say, this divine consciousness, meaning he understands that he is, even when he's like this kid. Remember that incident when his parents leave him behind, that's the classic after church kind of scenario. I thought she was with you, or he was with you, or whatever.
It's literally the most encouraging part of the Bible for parents who've ever made a mistake. Like, even Jesus' parents left him in a different city for 3 days before they realized and went back to get him.
Yeah, they thought he was with his cousins, but but when they go back and they're like, hey, we've been worried about you, you've been naughty, and he's like, don't you know I've got more important things to do? Shouldn't I be doing my, about my Father's business? So, right from the real get-go, the Bible makes it clear that Jesus was conscious, that he was truly God. And yet this is the mystery part of it, is that there was a limiting factor. There was because he was truly God. So theologians try and explain it. They say he's either fully God, fully man, or truly God, fully man or human. And so he was aware of that. And so right from the get-go, he's truly God and he's truly human.
And then, of course, it does become encouraging for us in other parts of the Bible too. It's easy to imagine, it's like, yeah, he's kind of like God in a human suit, but he's not really like us. But it does say that he had, a nature like ours to deal with, to the point where he can really relate to the challenges and things that we have to deal with.
Yeah, so that's a part of his true humanity. We're told that he was he was tempted or tested like we are in all points, in all kind of areas, without sin. So you say Jesus was truly or fully human or unfallen. He didn't take to himself a fallen human nature, so he wasn't corrupted by the thoughts and ideas and stuff like that you and I have to struggle with. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So he experienced all these things like hunger, cold, fear, all of these human sorts of emotions and experiences that we that we go through, he would have gone through as well, as to his human nature.
Yeah, because I think to truly understand what it's like to be in human flesh, you need to walk that walk, right? And that's why he's our advocate. So I guess this kind of leads to the next question, with knowing that Jesus was fully God and fully man, like as a child, Jesus would have witnessed his parents making mistakes and sinning, even if he didn't sin himself because he was completely sinless. I mean, how would have he had to have navigate that position? Like perhaps they got something wrong and they smacked his bottom because
Yeah,
they thought he
right.
was naughty and he's just taking it. Like it's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't know how he those particular situations, because we're not told, but we do see the way he interacted with other people. So he was very understanding, the way that Jesus interacted with when he had conversations with people who were struggling in life, people who broke protocols, for example, people who made ignorant sort of comments and things, sometimes like with Peter, get behind me, Satan. It was, that was almost like that was Jesus in his full Godhead, you might say, speaking to Peter at that point. But in other instances, he's when Mary comes to him at the wedding and hey, she wants more wine and things like that. Jesus complies. He goes along. He puts up with a lot. I mean, he the whole point is he humbles himself, doesn't he? And he takes to himself this form to identify with us in our fallenness and our weakness.
Yeah, in fact, we were talking about a term as well that's been used to describe when Jesus was here in his divine and human nature at the same time, a hypostatic union. Jeff, what on earth is that?
Yeah, that sounds complicated.
Well, Andrew, maybe you should explain it. But my understanding of it is that Jesus is truly human. He's truly divine, truly human, without sin, and he acts through either nature. So he possesses both. He's fully and truly God. He's fully and truly human, and he acts through either nature. And neither of those natures alter each other. So Jesus, his being God, it doesn't sort of change his humanity to be a kind of a superhumanity unlike ours. He remains like us. And likewise, his godhood or his deity is not changed by his humanity. That they're united together in this kind of union, but they also retain, you might say, their integrity. They remain
It's
distinct, so to speak.
really
So
interesting
they're
to
not
think about
divided or
this
confused. Yeah.
because when you say, he humbled himself, I mean, there's nothing more humbling than getting a terrible bout of gastro. So does that mean that Jesus suffered all the things that you go through as a human? Like what human being has not had gastro at least once in their life, right?
Well, I mean, I can't comment specifically about that, but I mean, we know from the Bible that he experienced storms. He experienced hunger, he experienced all of these, sadness, tears, grief at funerals, all of those kinds
Betrayal.
of things.
Yeah,
Sorry,
he experienced betrayal.
betrayal. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Betrayed with a kiss. Yeah.
To be honest, I've thought about that a bit lately because, I mean, sadly, some friends of mine, in my wider circle, you become aware of marriages and things that break down, and sometimes a betrayal is a part of that. And I've often thought, Jeff, even the way that Jesus was betrayed, in his humanity, like he could have gone out anyway. Like you think about the way that, say, he was captured and then put on trial. Because of God's sovereignty, he could have made it happen anyway. But I've always thought it interesting that God in his divine plan thought, I'm going to do this via betrayal, because I think it is something that for us as human beings, that is one of the most devastating things you can experience. Somebody that you love and that you trust betrays you, and in his humanity, he experienced that.
Yeah, and there's part of that kind of mystery, isn't it? Because the Apostle Peter talks about on the day of Pentecost when he stands up and preaches that sermon, and he says, that you and I'm paraphrasing here, by, your wicked hands, you've taken and crucified Jesus, the Son of God, but that was God's foreordained purpose, So there was like this human freedom on display, like away with him. We don't want this guy. I'm going to betray him for 30 pieces of silver, because I want the silver and I don't want him. And yet there's also behind that, there's the purposes, the incredible purposes of God being worked out for our salvation, that Jesus is betrayed. So you and I would not have to be betrayed eternally. He suffers so we wouldn't have to suffer eternally. He dies on the cross and takes away our sin so that we wouldn't have to go into eternity with carrying our sin.
And what he went through was horrific. And
Yeah.
what's even more incredible is that he went into it knowing that that would happen. And I think the most beautiful picture of forgiveness is the fact that he knew that Judas was going to betray him. He even called it at the Last Supper, like, you are going to betray me. Yet he chose to forgive in advance. And I mean, like, we all at some point in time experience that disappointment of a betrayal of trust in a friendship, whether grave or small. We all experience that as human beings. But do we decide in advance that we're going to forgive? But he really did show us how we are to live our lives, didn't he, as human beings, in that hurt and that brokenness. And when our spirits are crushed, we are still called to forgive.
And that is the beauty of this, what we, the incarnation, that Jesus is both God and man, in that in his both going to the cross, in his life was a life of humiliation. He was humiliated to become like us. His humiliation on the cross, his suffering, his death, and even now, right now, Jesus at the right hand of the Father on high has this humanity. He carries that with him, our nature, our flesh and blood nature, and he is at the Father's right hand, and so he understands that. He knows this. He knew this throughout. He carried that to the cross, and even now, as he intercedes for you and I, he knows and understands this because of his human nature.
It strikes me maybe for the first time talking about this, that as you say that, if that had happened to me, like if I'd gone to try and help a bunch of people and then they had done to me even half of what they did to Jesus, I'd be like, well, stuff these guys. Like, I don't need this. I've come to help these people. They've misunderstood me. They've slandered me. And then they've put me through all this. In some ways, we talked at the very start, how does this affect how we live today, Geoff? But I mean, it is a very strong repudiation of the idea that because someone has mistreated you, you have a right to dismiss them. He still intercedes for us in spite of what we did to him.
Yeah, for God so loved the world. Jesus, he told that beforehand, didn't he? Remember that parable of the farmer with the vineyard? And he sends his servants, and then he finally says, I'll send my son. They will respect him. And they say, here is the son, we'll kill him and throw him out, because we don't want him. That's the heart of God, isn't it? And demonstrated in Jesus.
And that's the part where we see the divine nature of God, right? We could never do this on our own. We can only achieve the kind of forgiveness through the work of the Holy Spirit and the work of the cross. Well, thank you so much, Geoff. It has been very thought-provoking today, talking about this concept of Jesus and how he is, in fact, truly divine and human as well. Thank you so much for your time on the show this morning.
Always a pleasure.
Amazing. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss the next video.
We'll see you in the next one.